Hello everyone, and welcome back to Total War Rome 2, the Battle of Carthage, and this is a rematch of the sub-commanders Rome versus Carthage. The Carthaginians did bring in some allies, though, here in the form of the Aravaci, which would not be unheard of. Carthage's interest in Hispania, or Spain, whatever you want to call it there, Iberia, meant that they certainly could have had Iberian tribes-type troops fighting with them, and did. In multiple occasions, they certainly Iberian weapons and armaments amongst the Carthaginians. So the Aravaci and Carthage here going up against the Romans, and the Romans had some allies as well, and we'll check that out. And later into a Punic War, by the way, the Romans certainly could have been rolling around with some Massilian allies, but here we're going to see, or sorry, not Massilian, Massazali allies, Numidians. I do believe that some of the Numidians joined Scipio against Hannibal and were actually a pretty important factor in turning the tides of that battle. But here the Massilians are going to join up with the Romans, and so we're going to see the Greeks joining up here and helping out the Romans, but essentially another Carthage versus Rome rematch, and I'm excited for this one. It's getting started fast, so I'm actually going to slow it down so we can hit some of the units. I see a lot of late Libyan hoplites out front for Carthage, mercenary Gallic warriors. Now again, this is sub-commanders, and in sub-commanders you have a cavalry player, a spear and missile player, and a melee infantry player. And then when there is a fourth player like there is here, the fourth player is an additional support player. They have to bring a minimum of 3 missiles, and then they can bring spears, and I think a max of like 2 melee, and then if they have money left, they can bring cavalry as well. And I'm assuming the Aravaci are probably player 4, or one of the Carthaginian players is here. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're player 4 because of the additional cavalry unit. But in any case, we got Rome and Massilia, and then again, if I'm having to guess here, I'm thinking maybe Massilia might be the player 4 as well. We'll see. But let's just take a look at the situation. It does look like one of the Roman players is playing the cavalry because they have the auxiliary Numidian cavalry. Again, unless they're player 4, I don't think so. I'm pretty sure that the Roman player here is playing the cavalry. And then the cavalry for Carthage is just going to be one of the Carthaginian players. So they've got, the Carthaginian horse. Let's take a look at the units. We got some Iberian spears, 3 Iberian slingers. It looks like mercenary Balearics. So 2 Balearics, an infantry line here, Libyans, African pikes, interesting. Libyans, more African pikes, some Celt-Iberian cavalry, Carthaginians, light Celtic horse, noble cav for Carthage. That's interesting. But then we have a general's bodyguard, an elephant, African war elephant general. We'd have a noble fighter general for the Aravaci. That's a very dangerous general. And there's some mercenary Numidian nobles. That is also a very interesting unit at this funds level because they are very good with their javelins and very deadly in melee, though you'd want to be careful around lighter jav cav with them. And then as far as the Roman army, I do believe it is Primarian. I'm seeing Hastati all across the front, Principe in a second line. The Equites, of course, are the cavalry. We're seeing some Triari, and we're seeing levies as some of the skirmishers, and then auxiliary Balearics, and more auxiliary Balearics. So interesting setup here. This should be a fun one. Rome appears to have the high ground, so we'll see whether they become Obi-Wan here, or whether the other team can be Anakin and get over the whole high ground mantra. Skirmishing from the high ground as well. Those Balearics are going to be tough, skirmishing from up high. I don't know what the exact benefits are. Back in Rome 1, you actually got increased range from the high ground, which makes sense and is cool, and I feel like Total War should bring that back. It's something that was a nice touch in the older games that we haven't seen in a long time. I definitely know that there are melee advantages to height in this game as well, so fighting uphill is not going to be fun. Running uphill to even get up there is also going to exhaust your troops quicker, so there is very much a difference in terrain whenever you're fighting over it like this. So the yellow and red team, or yellow and blue team here, fighting into the red team uphill. So we'll call it Carthage versus Rome, right? So the Carthage team is definitely not going to be enjoying that uphill battle, I don't think, but we'll see what they can pull off. The Roman infantry is going to be qualitatively superior, but again, at this funds level, it neutralizes quite a bit of that, and Carthage is totally capable of facing a Primarian Roman army, though I would still say that just, if I had to give an edge to someone, I would probably give it to Rome. The Stati are really a nice light unit, but then again, late Libyans are pretty decent at this funds level too, so they have a lot of armor for being cheap units. Let's see, we got more mercenary Balearics, and they are firing uphill. They're getting some damage done. There's Celtic slingers over here too, the cheap ones. Looks like a testudo formation from the Romans because the mercenary Balearics are starting to pick up their infantry. That's a good call. No need to get your infantry bashed up early. And now the African pikes are taking some fire from the Romans. That's a good call. Those African pikes are a great target because they'll be a pain later on if they can get into the right position. Pikemen are very difficult to get into the right position, but when they do, they own. Right? So it's kind of one of those things. It's a high risk, high reward. Very risky to take them, but African pikes, I think, have maybe a little bit better missile block than some pike units. Their shields look better than some pike units, but still not something that they're going to want to do. Like the Hastati here bringing the javelins forward, this is not good for the pikemen. This pike unit is, yeah, it should have just backed up when those Hastati came forward. They don't want to be in this position. They don't want to take a Pila volley here off of these Hastati. And that's exactly what the Hastati intend to do. They're not really wanting to do anything else but get the Pila. The pikemen are going to charge and then drop their pikes, which I see a lot of players do, but that can be tricky because you can see here it takes them a minute to get those pikes out. And the Hastati are just going to retreat after getting a decent charge. The pikes did deal a little bit of damage to the Hastati in the end, but I think the Hastati are getting the better of that engagement because of their Pila. Massilia making a push here. They've got Massilian cavalry and several Tarentine cavalry and a Hippeus Lancer pushing this flank, so it's a pretty heavy cavalry contingent. The Hippeus Lancer is better than the Carthaginian Noble Cavalry. Carthaginian Noble Cavalry is trash for the price. Wow, they're all just pulling back here. The Numidian Nobles are nearby, though. Good intercept here. Now maybe a countercharge. The Numidian Nobles, if they can catch these Tarentines, will absolutely shred them in a melee. But the Numidian nobles also need to be kind of held in reserve, if possible, because they will be extraordinarily deadly late into a battle as units get worn out and beat down. They certainly don't want to trade javelins with Tarentine cavalry. That is not where you want to spend noble cavalry. I would use that light horse to continue to screen that and keep the Tarentines turned around. Alright, so a melee fight is about to get started over here. Carthage getting most of the way up the hill. Looks like fresh units on both sides. It's a Saki Extraordinary. This is a high armor unit, kind of like a cheaper version of Sam Knights. Would be a good way to describe those Extraordinary. This African pike gets kind of caught out here on the flank, and it's only got 5 kills, and it is getting absolutely torn up. Those pikes probably should have never been out on the flank. Here comes a mercenary Gallic warrior headlong into a Saki Hastati. Hastati has decent armor for a cheap unit. It's going to be a tough fight there. Another Saki Hastati here. These are like light Sam Knights. Again, probably the best way to describe them. Principe now pushing forward over here. Really no infantry, so to speak of, over here for Carthage. Noble cavalry and their Aravaci allies. Let's see, the noble cavalry for the Numidians is smartly staying behind spear units. I like that. That's a smart move, but these Tarentines are a real problem at the moment. Where did the elephants end up? Okay, they're still being held in reserve. Great call. Hold the elephants back. The Romans are holding some units in reserve for the elephants as well, including these levies, and again, smart play. There's a lot of Roman cavalry over here. The Massilian player ended up bringing quite a lot of cavalry. I believe they were player 4, and then one of the Romans was the other one. And I kind of like the idea of player 4 bringing a lot of cavalry. It can be very handy in the right situation. Cavalry is a very essential tool in these fights, and once you start to roll up a flank or take out skirmishers, it really puts undue pressure. Look at this, the Numidian noble charging at the axe warriors here. They're doing just fine, too. Those Numidian nobles are very tough units. They'll probably want to watch out for this situation. That Carthaginian general is getting absolutely beat down here by the skirmishers, and these noble cavalry better get away from this because that is not where they want to be right now. Oh no, they're going to go for it. They're going to go for it. The Romans don't have any cavalry to counter them at the moment, so we'll see what those Numidian nobles can get done. They're kind of getting far away from support. Right now, the power bar is favoring Rome. So Rome might be well on the road to revenge here against Carthage. And the Equites over here overpowering the Celtiberian cavalry. There's even more Equites breaking through. Carthage is doing okay in terms of infantry in that vicinity, but there's still Triarii back there. The elephants are looking for an opening, but not sure about overcommitting anywhere, and that's probably a good call, but at the same time, like, they're needed. The elephants are definitely needed. There's a ton of Equites on the battlefield. Those Numidian nobles are just thrashing right now. Those Hippeus Lancers will put a good charge on the nobles, but if the nobles can get into combat with the Hippeus without being charged, they'll do well, but the charge of those Lancers would be pretty bad for the noble cavalry. Look at this one, 133 kills. Just came in here and thrashed the Tarentines and the Celtic Slingers. This is where Numidian noble cavalry shine. They get into a fight like that where the enemy's a little bit lightweight, not quite as capable as they should be, and the nobles will just absolutely beat them down. They are expensive units, so you do have to be careful with them, but they can really pay dividends when they get into the right fight. So like right over here, if Carthage can fix that Lancer and then bring the nobles to bear, they'll be gruesome. 72 kills in that one, not bad. Not bad, but Rome is really just pushing their weight around here in the infantry fight. And the elephants are badly needed, but it's too late, like, to bring them to bear. Look at all, you got Balearic Slingers back here, you got levies back here. There's cavalry running everywhere. The elephants, they needed to be into a fight earlier. You do have to hold them. You can't throw them too early into a fight. But at the same time, like, they have to come in before your infantry gets rolled up, right? And that's the problem here, is that the infantry is just rolled up for Carthage, and so now it's elephants versus the world, and that will only work if the world, in quotes there, is a bunch of worn-out infantry with no javelins. So if that is the world at large, then the elephants will do fine. The noble cavalry is pulling back over here. That's the one that's just gone kill crazy. The other ones did pretty good too. They wrapped up that Hippeus Lancer, but there's just very little left here for Team Carthage. The elephants are in, but here comes that reserve that Rome held on to for this very reason. The elephants are actually already berserked, probably by a Pilatos, if I had to guess. And then, yeah, the levies are going to open fire here, and the Balearic Slingers as well. So the elephants are going to continue to berserk, and Carthage at this point should just let them do whatever damage they can do. They can't control them, and you certainly wouldn't want to kill the elephants before they can do some damage. They did get a lot of kills, like a whole lot of kills. I don't think it's going to be enough to turn the tide of the battle here. But, I mean, they certainly didn't do nothing on the battlefield. Elephants can get kills so quickly. Yeah, the 257 kills, not bad. Not bad. Like I said, I don't think it's going to be enough. The Equites are back here, and the Numidian noble cavalry should put a pretty good beat down on the Equites. They're a little bit light. It calls them a heavy melee cav, and they do have a bonus versus large. You wouldn't want to just go head-to-head, you know, with an Equite like that, but when they're beaten like this, the noble cavalry for the Numidians is going to really do well. I like the Numidian noble cavalry. It's a cool add for Carthage that came later in the game, but I feel like the standard Numidian cavalry should have been a lighter weight version of this. Like kind of a cross between Iberian cav and skirmisher cav, and that would have been, in my mind, a good representation of the Numidian cavalry. I don't know whether the Numidians ran a heavier cavalry like this or not, but this is a cool unit, and in my mind is a fun addition to the roster for Carthage and some other factions. I mean, they are very potent in these lower funds battles like this. Carthaginian cavalry going head-to-head with Equites. It is better, qualitatively speaking. There is a noble fighter here, but it is probably going to get picked apart by all of these skirmishers. Though, in a head-to-head competition, it probably could kill pretty much everything that the Romans have left, assuming it was given such an opportunity, but I don't imagine the Romans are going to give it such an opportunity. Oof, man, these Numidian noble cavalry are really making things difficult for the Romans. Cycling in, yeah, the Lusitani, they're wavering due to the fire. This unit would have done better to stay back closer to the cavalry. It's way too far forward, and it's kind of giving the Roman freebies here in terms of skirmisher kills. It did get a lot of kills, so again, not a unit that was utterly wasted, but it should have stayed back closer to the cavalry support. With that cavalry support, it's possible that noble fighter could have gotten in, fixed the Triarii, and then let the Numidian noble cavalry roll up the rest of those skirmishers. Maybe not enough left here, but I mean, still, it's worth a shot. The Romans did have a fair amount of mobility left, though, and it would have made it difficult. Epic performance by those Numidian noble cavalry here. Whichever Carthaginian player rolled them. I mean, just huge kills on those units, close to 400 kills. It was, yeah, it's over 400 kills for the Numidian nobles, the 2 units. Dang. What a bunch of Chads. That's what they should rename it. Just rename it Numidian Chad Cav. Anyway, Rome is going to get its revenge. I think the last time we saw this Primerian matchup that Carthage may have taken it. So there you go, revenge of Rome in the Primerian matchup. Some people wondered whether, and I gave my opinion last time that I think that Carthage may be better than Primerian Rome. It's possible. It depends on the matchup, right? And remember that it's different when you're in these sub-commanders matchups because it's lower funds for each player. And so again, there's a lot of factors that come into play. I would say that it's probably close, even if Carthage had an edge. I don't think they have a big edge. Here we go. Numidian nobles, one last Chad charge. They're going to get a bunch more kills, too. There you go. Okay, the Velites and Levies had javelins left, so they'll finish it. Yeah, they did get a lot more kills. Holy cow, they rocketed up over 300 there. Dang. Wow. Great battle. Great sub-commander battle there. Sol and his team not able to pull off the Carthaginian victory, and Waro, Nummer, Girom, and Riviet are going to hold out and make Rome proud there. So a cool battle. I love how they set up one ally for each main faction here too. That was a really cool setup. In fact, I know that Sol is working on doing some more historically themed sub-commanders. He had some really cool themes, like the Romans against Parthia, like themes like... what was it, Caesar and Gaul. He had some really cool themes thought up, and I'm excited to see the battles from him. I'm going to try and participate with him, but I'm about to be gone for a week, so I probably won't get to participate in everything, but do hope you all enjoyed this. This was a lot of fun to see. I appreciate all the players. Let's take a look at some of the stats. That Lusitani noble definitely getting some kills despite having gotten chopped up there late. Alexander, this pike units didn't do much, but his slingers did pretty good, and his noble cavalry got a pretty fair number of kills there. Warlord of the Lowland, a lot of cavalry. Man, those Numidian noble cavalry were just absolutely brilliant. That's over 500 kills now for those units. So a very impressive showing for the Numidian noble cavalry. I told you all early that they could be very dangerous units, and Warlord proved it. Ward against Sauce here, a lot of kills with the elephants, but there just wasn't a great opening. I think the Romans did a very good job of knowing the threat of the elephants, holding on to some skirmishers and levies. That is Rome's best answer in Primerian Rome is going to be levies and velites. They will get rid of elephants very quickly, and they're not very expensive. So well done to Number by holding on to those units and keeping that support handy. Waro here, it looks like, was carrying the melee infantry. Did a good job in that fight. It was a tough one against Carthage, but he did win it. And then Girom, very nice secondary support here with Massilia. He was player 4, it appears, because he has the minimum of 3 skirmishers. But then it brings in a couple of spears and the rest of his money spent on cavalry. So I think that was a very nice support army pick by Massilia. And then Riviet here is the main cavalry player for Rome. Did a good job with his Saki Equites. Had a ton of cavalry on the battlefield. It may not have been the world's best, but numbers are very important. And I think that ended up playing a role here. So GG, thank you to all the players. HeirofCarthage signing out for now.